Now, a little over a week ago, I attended a live stream over on the Ron Stryker channel with Risky Krisky and Bug Out Bushido. The main focus of that live stream was Summer of Love 2.0 and our thoughts on how this could happen this summer, who would be involved, that type of things. And I thought about it, talked with Ron, and figured I should put out a separate video on this as kind of a warning or a heads up to people on what could potentially be happening starting in mid to late May of 2023, so a month from now. Now, first off, I'm going to cover a little bit here on the groups that I think are going to be involved in this. The main ones that we're going to see involved in these activities over the summer, we're going to see Antifa, we're going to see BLM, and we're especially going to see radicalized transgenders. So not necessarily that tranny hooker standing on the street corner in San Francisco. These are the ones that are being taught, they're being propagandized, told nonstop that, you know, we are out to get them. They're being genocided. They're being killed every hour of every day. Now, with Antifa, why do I think they're going to be involved? Earlier this year, you had police down around Atlanta raid what was called Cop City occupation, the woods down there where the police department is attempting to build a training site. Antifa has been occupying these woods for about 2 years now. Well, a couple months back, the police moved in to try to clear out these activists from inside these woods. Now, these activists have been posting for 2 years. They've been posting videos of them with firearms, them with IEDs, them with Molotov cocktails, them setting up booby traps, setting up ambushes to protect those woods, to fight the power. Well, when the police were going through there, they knew there was the possibility something bad was going to happen, so they went in tactically. At one of the campsites they came across, they called out for anyone that was there to lay down their arms, come out peacefully. Well, a member of Antifa responded by starting to shoot at the cops. At least one of them was hit. From last I heard, the officer did survive. Police returned fire. They were not the ones who fired first. They returned fire and they killed the Antifa member that shot at them. Now, immediately after, when word got out, Antifa declared war on the police down in Atlanta. They declared that this person is a martyr. They were killed unjustifiably by the police, completely ignoring the part that that person opened fire on the cops first, and the cops were defending themselves in that situation. So Antifa has said they are going to ramp up things in Atlanta, and as we've seen in the past, it's just going to spread from there. Black Lives Matter. Why do I think they're going to be involved? Well, we're starting to see the same type of escalation like we've seen in 2020. Every little piece of crap criminal who is of a black skin tone is being lionized and said to be a martyr. Most recently here we had down in Kansas City a 16-year-old attempted forced entry into a home of an 84-year-old man. From what I heard, this was occurring at about 1:30 a.m. local time. So this wasn't during the daytime. This was in the middle of the night. This 6-foot-tall 16-year-old was trying to force his way into this home. This 84-year-old man, after seeing that this 16-year-old was well over 6 foot tall and was built, well, something occurred. I'm hoping he said, leave immediately or I'll shoot. We don't have the details on that yet. He did end up firing, hitting this kid and injuring him. As soon as he got done shooting, he contacted 911 and notified him as to what happened. In less than 24 hours, the media and the White House declared that this was a racist event, and they're showing once again pictures of this 16-year-old from when he was like 10 or 12 years old. They're showing it from multiple years ago so that you think it was a young kid trying to enter this home. This guy was over 6 foot tall, or is over 6 foot tall. He has lived. I have not heard of an interview with him yet where they've actually shown him. They have interviewed his family on the news, the whole heartfelt pleas on this is racism and so forth. BLM and Antifa have conducted multiple protests outside this home of the 84-year-old man. They've graffitied the place and all kinds of stuff. I'm actually surprised they haven't tried burning him out yet. Now, radicalized transgenders. These are the ones that I think are probably going to be used as the catalyst, the ones that are going to get the more violent stuff going this year. I've noticed over the last few months here, since like January, early February time frame is when I started getting articles sent to me, forwarded posts from social media that people had come across of radicalization going on in the transgender movement. Now, what's going on in there? People are coming in, stoking up people in the transgender movement who are mentally unstable. I'm not saying all of them are, but there are that element in there. And these radicals are focusing on them. They're trying to get them spun up. They're telling them that Nazis are out to get them, fascists are hunting them down daily. It's a trans genocide going on every day, but the media doesn't want to show it, doesn't want to talk about it. And then they show pictures to their targets in the transgender movement, showing them pictures of examples of Nazis. They're showing them pictures of traditional families. A mother, a father, and kids, showing them pictures of churches and so forth and Christian centers, saying that this is where the Nazis are meeting. We need to stop them. Now, the result of this, which we can't say 100% is for certain because they have not released the manifesto yet. We had the little incident within the last month here down in Nashville where a self-identified transgender, a woman who says she was a guy, killed 6 people at a Christian school in Nashville. The media, after that, has kind of glossed over that 6 people died in that school. They've kind of consolidated on that the true victim of that shooting was the shooter because of trans genocide, and that this person was attacking Christians because Christians obviously had to have been attacking him, her, whatever the fuck you want to call it. So this it decided to defend itself by shooting up a Christian school because Christian schools are just filled with Nazis. And there's also a thing out there that's being pushed that churches and Christian schools are nothing but pedo rape centers. This is starting to appear out there too. That's being pushed alongside the trans genocide thing to justify this shooter. So these are the main groups. There are other organizations that do not fall directly into these categories, but are definitely allied with them. things like the Socialist Rifle Association, the John Brown Gun Club, and Redneck Revolt, to name a few. These organizations, for the most part, fall underneath Antifa. Antifa is just this big nebulous organization with no real one person at the top that we're aware of. And basically any little group out there can call themselves Antifa. And it really looks like we're seeing a lot of these other organizations, like the ones I mentioned, the John Brown Gun Club, Socialist Rifle Association, Redneck Revolt. They fall under that umbrella of Antifa. Now, those three organizations I've mentioned, these are ones who do show up to different leftist rallies with firearms, with body armor, and they are hoping that someone does something that would justify them to shoot that person. Because in their minds, they are fighting actual Nazis. Doesn't mean they actually are. In their minds, they are. Now, what do I anticipate is going to start here in mid to late May? Now, the reason I pick mid to late May as the kickoffs for the start of the Summer of Love is because that's when the high schools and the colleges are going to start letting out. And Antifa and BLM really rely on that cannon fodder from the high schools and the colleges to fill their ranks for protests and riots, especially for riots. So I think in May here, we're going to start seeing a lot of protests, and some of these will get violent. I got a feeling we're probably going to see one or two more George Floyd moments before we get into late May. We'll hear about some other black criminal who was high on drugs, who beat his girlfriend, and then the cops showed up to try to save the girlfriend from getting beat to death, and then the abuser is going to get shot, and then we're going to see the media talking about another racist attack against the black community, and they're going to completely ignore the actual crimes that were happening at that event. Why do I say that? Because we've seen it before in places like Kenosha in 2020. So we'll start seeing protests then, and some of them will get violent. People will get hurt. You will see cop cars getting burned. I doubt they're going to start going after police stations at that time unless the police start deploying a little bit more and take a little bit heavier hand trying to stop them from destroying property. Down in Atlanta, I think we're going to see at that point, we're definitely going to see a lot of violence being committed down there by Antifa. BLM will join along. Now, once we get into June, that's when I think we're definitely going to start seeing things changing. Now, we do know that Antifa does have a quote-unquote special operations element. This special operations element is people who have gone to Syria and have fought alongside Kurdish communists in the YPG against the Syrian government and against the Turks. They took that combat experience, and yes, they were trained on IED use, sniping, and all that stuff, brought that experience back and trained other people here. We're also seeing Antifa is sending basically busloads of people to Ukraine to fight for Ukraine, and some of them are also staying inside that communist pipeline. They end up in some of the militias out of the Donbass that are communist organizations, and they're fighting with them against actual Ukrainian Nazis. It's a weird situation, but regardless, Antifa is sending people to Ukraine to get training on modern Russian and NATO equipment. Some of the people that are going into Ukraine are also people who had served in Syria. So they're going in there with that IED training, ambush training, and all that stuff, and they're basically in the advanced course in Ukraine. Guaranteed, they are going to be coming back. And when they come back, they will be training more people. And they will become the instructors for the cannon fodder when they get to that point in their operations. But starting in June, I think that's when we're going to start seeing things ramping up. First, we're going to see beatings and we'll see shootings. Now, these, I suspect, will be Antifa special operations for the most part. I'm not discounting that there could be three-letter agencies doing this also. And they will be sheep-dipped or dressed like patriots, MAGA supporters, and traditional Christians. So they will be out there wearing the red MAGA hat. They got to have that. Why? Because that's the symbol associated with Republicans. So they're going to have MAGA hats on. They're going to be out there with camouflage, looking like they're in a militia, looking like they're a patriot, and they're going to start beating people at some of these protests. And they will make sure that it's caught on camera. They'll start shooting people at these protests. Now, don't forget, communists are not above killing their own people if it gets them something that they want. So if they lose 6, 10, 20 people at a protest dead, to them, that's a minor statistic as long as they get those optics that they want, painting Republicans and traditional Americans, patriots, as the real threat in this country. Now, this is going to keep building up and building up as we go through June. I think by mid-June, that's when we're going to start seeing IEDs. And primarily pipe bombs at first. These are going to be set up. They're going to go off on the side of a rally, and you're just going to happen to have the major news networks, or their cameras are all pointed in that direction when that blast occurs. And then they're going to be on there about, the latest MAGA bombing. No one will be injured. Maybe you'll have one or two that were stupid that were in the area. But I think for the most part, when the IEDs get employed, no one's going to get injured. And it's just going to keep building and building and building. Now, it's going to get to a point where we're going to start seeing rioting sooner or later. Antifa is going to spin up. BLM is going to spin up. They're going to not just protest, they're going to go back into what they did in 2020. They're going to start burning shit. They're going to start, attacking police stations, burning churches, which they did in 2020 also, and attacking people. Now, I do suspect we are going to see shootings in churches starting in mid to late June. Now, the churches being attacked, I feel that especially in the beginning, these are going to be more like your Hispanic churches, your black gospel churches. Well, maybe they won't go after black gospel, but they'll go after Asians and that type of stuff. They'll go after the churches that are focused more on that groups. And I also suspect that you're going to see at that time shootings at synagogues again, where they're going to bring up that fucking, what is his name, Dylan Roof or whatever the hell it was. So you're going to start seeing that stuff in the news too. I expect this is going to start probably around mid-June. And it's just going to get worse and worse and worse. Now at this point, they're going to hope that some patriots are going to say enough is enough, and they're going to start getting involved, start beating more people at the Antifa rallies, maybe ambushing them, putting in IEDs and all that stuff. And if they don't get that, they'll do that themselves. I have a feeling by late June, we're going to start seeing car bombs or VBIEDs, vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices. They won't necessarily go off, but police will just happen to find them near the Antifa and BLM mostly peaceful protests. And I do suspect that you probably will see some of those employed against groups of police and police stations. And then you're going to see probably a release of some video of someone who's dressed up, with the American flag in the background, MAGA hat, I support Trump, all that stuff, talking about how they're fighting back because they're going to establish the new Confederacy and all that garbage. And then the media is going to run with that. So we're going to see that stuff going on. You know, once we get into July, that's when I think we're going to start seeing full on basically combat going back and forth as people are just so pissed off. So at that point, you probably will see at least the patriot traditional Americans in those cities saying enough is enough. If I'm going to be attacked, they're going to come after me. I'm going to fight back. So we'll start seeing probably some running battles going on starting in July. Now, while this is going on, we're going to see arson happening. We're going to see robberies. We're going to see beatings. We're going to see ransacking, graffiti. We're going to see swatting events. I especially see it where you're going to have people calling up for swatting a person because they have an American flag in their yard. And that SWAT call to the police will be, hey, there's a MAGA violent extremist that lives at this address. He's planning to attack the Antifa rally on this day. You need to stop him. So then the police are going to go in there, no knock warrant, red flag raid, kick in the doors, you know, and mysteriously people get shot. Even if they don't find a single firearm in the house, everyone inside will end up being killed and we'll be told it's a murder-suicide. And this will keep going on and on and on through the summer. It'll just keep building till we start seeing basically what we've seen in Baghdad in, say, 2004 through 2007, really. We'll start seeing that in the major cities. Now, will Antifa leave the cities and come out into the rural areas? I don't know on that. I'm not sure if they're going to attempt it, because when they tried that in 2020, it ended very badly for them. What a lot of people do not know is that in 2020, when Antifa did try going into rural areas, they were met by law enforcement with shotguns, rifles, waiting there at the corner, at the edge of town, stopping the white buses that were coming in, white buses with no license plates that were basically protected, not allowed to be pulled over. But those buses showed up at the edges of town and the sheriff said, nope, not here. You need to turn around and leave. We also seen, and I got multiple reports on this stuff, when Antifa would show up to a community, you had hundreds or thousands of the locals from that area standing there with firearms waiting. You had militia deployed on the streets, full battle rattle, in uniform, watching, waiting for when they showed up. And when Antifa would show up to those communities, their recon people, which typically traveled ahead of them, told them, hey, the optics are not going to be good. It's not worth it. Turn around. Let's move on to the next community. This happened a lot more than you know because the media did not cover it. Why? Because when it comes to media, if it bleeds, it leads. And in those situations, no one got hurt. Fight never happened. So they didn't talk about it. But there's been talk about it. There's videos on it from inside the Patriot community. So now I'm going to go into now organization. So you got the combatants, you got the expected operations. What's the possible organization, the possible structure we're going to see? Now in 2020, it was identified fairly quickly, say by the beginning of June, that Antifa was running essentially squads or platoons of one leader who was their squad leader or whatever they tagged them for their official name. And underneath them was 10 individuals that officially were assigned to that person. That leader's job was basically to steer those 10 people to where they needed to be to accomplish a particular mission. It could be to start a riot in a particular area. It could be to start arsons. It could be to rob something. And reportedly, that leader of those 10 was having a hell of a time. Now, these 11 individuals were not alone. Typically, you had others that would tag along because they would realize, hey, I'm going to tag with them. It's going to be fun. I'm going to get rich. I'm going to get me some new shoes, new TV set or whatever. So you had that little group that maybe had, say, 50 to 100 associated with them that would tag along. Now, this squad reported to a company commander. The company commander was in charge of typically 3 to 5 sections, is what I had heard. So basically, you would have 3 to 5 sections working in one particular little district or area of a town with that one company commander in charge. The leaders of each of these different levels would be identified by a particular colored armband, maybe a sticker or something on the side of a helmet or a shoulder patch or a particular piece of clothing. Something that was easily visible and identifiable but would not give away to law enforcement or patriots that this person is in charge. So you had that company commander. He was in charge of 3 to 5 sections or platoons operating in a little area. Now above him was a battalion commander. That battalion commander was the same. He was in charge of 3 to 5 companies operating inside that area of the city. Now that battalion commander, I don't remember if he's the one that had this asset or he reported to a brigade or regimental commander that had this asset. But up at the leadership, the one that was in charge of the overall operations happening in that city, that leader was located inside a van. These were typically your cargo vans or delivery trucks. And in the back of these were tons of electronic equipment. You had scanners in there, you had radios, you had computers that can do decryption so that they could bust into secured nets and monitor what was going on. Now that overall commander, which I don't remember if they were brigade level or battalion level, they communicated with the people under them by runners, not by radio. So they usually had 5 to 10 runners. If I remember correctly, I think the number was primarily around 5, but some were identified with more. Runners whose job was to take orders out to those company commanders, those battalion commanders, to tell them what they needed to do in the operation. This runner was on foot or more typically was using a bicycle to get around because roadblocks were up. Vehicles were not allowed to get in, but someone moving around on foot, someone moving around on bicycle, higher speed, could get in there with those orders to pass them off. Now, logistics support for these operations that was noticed in 2020. We all know about the pallet loads of bricks, okay? But that is not the only logistical support they had. Now, you had food trucks that would come in and delivery trucks that would come in with supplies. You would have delivery trucks would show up. They would have tentage and whatever was needed, tarps, and they would set up makeshift shelters that the Antifa activists and BLM activists could stay at during the daytime till it got dark, and then they would put their black masks back on and go back in and start burning shit during the nighttime. The primary way of moving stuff around on that battlefield or area of operations was the food trucks. These food trucks would move through and drop off what was needed to the different sections and companies. These food trucks not only delivered food, they would also have with them ammunition for people that had firearms if they were running low and they didn't steal enough ammunition from the gun stores that they burned out. They would also deliver the materials to make IEDs and Molotov cocktails. This was not identified till later in the summer of 2020 when the police finally started inspecting these food trucks. That's when they would find, hey, this truck is, your stove in here uses propane, but you got five-gallon jugs of gasoline over here in the corner. You have bags of rags over here, and over in that corner you have boxes filled with empty bottles. That's how they identified that that's how the logistics was going around. Now, I don't know when the handoff was going on. We do know that in 2020, Antifa was targeting specific businesses. They were targeting not just big box stores, but they were specifically targeting places they could get money, they could get precious metals, they could get firearms, they could get ammunition, and they could get components to make IEDs. The thoughts are that a lot of these gas stations that they were setting ablaze is that probably before they did that, they were pumping out as much gasoline as possible from the tanks. There are handheld pumps that you can run on a battery and stuff and pump straight from those tanks. They were probably filling jugs, loading them back into the backs of vehicles, hiding them off on the side, putting them in the back of those food trucks or whatever to move around logistically. So that's what I've been able to write up. Now, why are they going to start this summer? I think they're going to start it this summer so that when we roll into the spring of 2024, they can use the example of what happened in the Summer of Love 2.0 as justification for why they need to pass certain legislation starting in spring, and also disenfranchising certain voters. How they're going to do that, I don't know, but I got a feeling we are going to see things where they're going to say that, anyone who shows up at a polling place with a MAGA or Trump anything, you're not going to be allowed to vote because you're a potential problem. You're maybe there to attack the polling place, so they'll probably have police stationed outside to keep you from voting. Something that's completely illegal, but as we've seen under the current regime, they're more than willing to do it. I think we're going to see a lot of demonization that's going to go from starting in May, and it's just going to continue through to the election of 2024 of the white Christian extremists, militia extremists, MAGA extremists. You're going to see, the rehash of January 6th. You're going to see the rehash of everything that happens in the Summer of Love, and they're all going to blame it on the patriots and the MAGA supporters. Once we get into spring, that's when we're going to start seeing more restrictions on firearms. We're going to see more restrictions on body armor. Why they keep pushing for that, no one in their right mind can come up with a good answer on that, because it is a protective item, not an offensive item. But they're still pushing for that. I think they will pass legislation on that stuff starting in spring. And also in spring is when I suspect we're going to start seeing arrests. We're going to see law enforcement, especially federal law enforcement, going out and raiding people that the media is going to be told are violent militia extremists. Whether they are or not doesn't matter. They're going to come in and they're going to start arresting the people that they think are potential leaders of the resistance, the real leaders. A lot of these people you see that are mentioned as, this is the head of the resistance, this is the head of the militia movement. If you hear the media say that, that person was put there by the Department of Justice. They are a controlled figurehead. And I think starting in the spring of 2024, that's when they're going to go after the actual people that they identify as the potential real leaders of the resistance if or when things kick off. And I think sometime in then, that's when you're going to start seeing the hundreds of individual Lexington Green moments, because not everyone will get arrested. You're going to have some people that are going to slip out. They are going to get away from the cops. They are going to get away from the roadblocks. And then they're going to say, fuck it, if they're after me, I'm going active now. The war starts right now, in my opinion. And then it's just going to be a snowball from there. I don't believe we're going to have an election next November. I think by they're counting on that by next November, there's going to be so much chaos going on that they'll quote unquote postpone it for the safety of the voters. And then they will say that, well, the Biden administration, they've only done one term. They can do another one legally according to the Constitution. You'll have the Supreme Court coming out and giving their support behind it and all that too. So there you go. That's what I anticipate we're going to start seeing here in a month. Put your suggestions, your ideas in the comments below. What do you think we're going to start seeing? You know, personally, I hope this does not occur. I really pray it doesn't occur, because a lot of people are going to get hurt. We've seen $2 to $4 billion in damage in 2020. I got a feeling we'll probably top that easily this year when we start getting into this type of stuff. Now, I didn't cover how these the Summer of Love will end in fall. I'm not sure how they're going to do it, but I think things will ramp down, and then we'll hear about federal law enforcement got involved and they cracked down and they stopped the different organizations and attacks from happening, but people got away, and then those people that quote unquote got away will be the ones that they're going to go after reportedly in spring of 2024. So there you go. I will put a link to the live stream from Ron Stryker in the description. In YouTube, it'll be at the top and a pinned comment. Now, for all my engineer brothers in the Patriot Militia movements, always remember, essayons.